Hi everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month of June 2020. So in this video, I'll be taking a look at the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And we'll start with Aries. So the first transit that I'm looking at this month is Venus is Cazimi with the sun on June 3rd. So if you're an Aries rising, this is going to show up in your third house, which means that the topics of communication, speech, learning, siblings, and neighbors, some of the main third house topics, are going to be activated. Now, though, how are they going to be activated? Well, the Sun-Venus conjunction usually brings a pretty lively, sort of sparkling, fun, stimulating, beautiful, but intelligent combination. So you could see that showing up in terms of new projects or something on something online or something that you're a part of creatively in social media. It can also mean that communication and relationships are smooth, pleasant, upbeat, productive, even lucky somehow. So I like this transit for you right at the beginning of the month. It should be a pretty nice little window with Venus right there on the sun. Now that's all day on June 3rd that you should be able to feel that. When we go forward to the 5th, that's when the month really starts, cooking. We're in eclipse season, and you've got the Gemini Sagittarius axis emphasized with the full moon lunar eclipse in your ninth house, which is the place of the higher mind, religion, beliefs, foreign countries or long journeys. It's a place of universities and professors. This eclipse is also happening at the same time that a square to Mars is taking place between the Sun, Moon, and Mars in the 12th house. The ninth house lunar eclipse often signifies a change of belief, a change in your life that's very significant regarding religion or learning or higher education or possibly even travel to a foreign place in the world. The square to Mars in the 12th house suggests that there is something you're confronting at this time, or something that might be a little bit more challenging. You have to be careful of really aggressive or confrontational dynamics around things like religion and politics during this time. But you may also notice that there is some inner doubt or inner darkness that you're having to face that is closely related to your mind, your belief, your thoughts, learning, spirituality, and things like that. Possibly also the topic of travel could become really important during this time. So that is a little bit about the eclipse that's happening in your ninth house on June 5th. If we go forward between the 12th and the 13th, right around that time, the Mars and Neptune are going to conjoin in your 12th house. Now, this has the feeling of a moment of something self-sacrificial, perhaps learning to let go of something or coming to a moment of frustration or a frustration that leads to surrender. But it also could have something to do with putting all of oneself or one's energy or one's will, one's actions into a higher cause or purpose. You want to make sure that it's not something self-destructive, that you're not losing yourself or sort of martyring yourself in a way that's unhealthy or potentially being done to make some kind of statement or something like that. This energy in the 12th house can tend toward losing ourselves in an unhealthy way, and sometimes through rash or impulsive decisions. But it can also mean that we're giving ourselves to something, surrendering something, or coming to an important moment of releasing or letting go or surrendering after feeling frustrated by something, which could be a real release. So watch for that around the 12th to the 13th. Now, when we go forward to the 18th and 19th of the month, right around that time, Mercury is going to station and turn retrograde in your fourth house of home and family, property, parents. And when Mercury turns retrograde in that house, it generally means that there is going to be the plot line is shifting somehow relative to those topics. And you'll notice this play out over the course of several more weeks to come, but it's getting down into ancestral family karma and maybe changes in somehow in the interior of your home or related to home, property, family, parents in general. So you can watch for that starting between the 18th and the 19th. And then almost right afterwards, on the 21st, there's going to be a solar eclipse in Cancer in your fourth house, further emphasizing that there is a real period of change, a new seed that's being planted, but it comes along with the eclipsing event, which can be a new seed that's being planted due to something else in the environment changing that's outside of your control, or something else ending that then forms the new seed. And that's what eclipses, especially the solar eclipses, bring. So look for that again around home and family, parents, family karma, land or property, and that's on the 21st. Now, when we go between June, right around June 26th, kind of go forward a little bit more, you're going to see on June 26th that Venus is going to turn direct. Now, Venus is turning direct in your third house, which means if there has been a process of change and transformation in your mind, in the life of your intellectual life, or within a classroom environment, or even just your some kind of digital or technological or media creative approach to something that you've been fine-tuning or changing in some way, you're going to notice a turn. A turn in the story. The retrograde is over. Venus is turning direct. It's time to implement things. It's time to recover. It's time to move forward if there's been delays. It's time to see the fruits of the labor of the Venus retrograde that you've had in that third house of the mind. So that could be a time of kind of starting to see the results of some inner work that you've been doing, or maybe even some creative project that you've been working on. On June 27th, Mars is going to enter your home sign of Aries, which is great because obviously, as an Aries, here we go. Right around the 27th into the 28th, it's on the cusp between the two. Mars will enter Aries, your home sign, after a long time of being in the 12th house. This should feel like a moment of rebirth. This should feel like you are being set free, that you are coming home somehow, or that you're able to be more free and more mobile again, and feeling more empowered. Maybe a focus starting late June on your health, your vitality, your body. And this is foreshadowing a Mars retrograde that'll come later in the summer in your home sign. Now, finally, at the very end of the month, as if we need anything more, right? Jupiter will conjoin Pluto in your 10th house of career. All month this is cooking. There's a big moment of catharsis. There's several of them this year for you if you're an Aries rising. And the catharsis through Jupiter Pluto is reappearing after its initial conjunction with Pluto early in the year. Now it's coming back, and you should see some kind of breakthrough, or I would call it a catharsis of some kind relative to your career or work in the world. That comes through right at the end of the month. So that's what I've got for you. Let's start over at the beginning of the month and do this again for Leo. So for Leo, we're going to put Leo on the ascendant. And we're going to start over with the Venus Cazimi that happens on the 3rd of the month. Now, the Cazimi for you is taking place in your 11th house. This is the place of friends, groups, allies, benefactors. You could see some really nice and surprising benefits, or surprising good luck that comes through friends or colleagues or people somehow that you are connected to, through the internet or through social media. It's just has that feeling of like networking that turns out some kind of positive result. It could also be that your connection with your friends or people who are like-minded is somehow featured and really beneficial at this time. So it's kind of a nice transit to start the month with, especially since you've been going through Venus retrograde in your 11th house of friends and groups. This is a turning point in that process. So I really like the looks of it. Now on the 5th, this is where we've got the big lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. For you, it's falling in your 5th house, and it's in a square to Mars. So what can we say about this? Well, the 5th house has a lot to do with pleasure, joy, happiness, recreation. what we do for fun, romance, sex, even procreation, childbirth, pregnancy are related to this place, children in general. So your children could be highlighted somehow during this eclipse period. Eclipse with a square to Mars may not be easy. There may be something difficult that one of your children is dealing with, or that you're dealing with in a relationship to a child. You know, trust that this too shall pass if it's a difficult space. Eclipses are there because they need to happen. Eclipses bring that change that are reflecting the laws of karma and the harder twists and turns of the plot line that that happen. So trust the process, and remember to be patient and graceful. Mars energy is a little confrontational. You can see that with your kids a little bit. But otherwise, there might be questions about, what makes you happy, you really truly happy, and how much of that is shaped or conditioned by what others think, or by your social life, or by others' needs and wants and desires, and how much are you compromising? Questions along those lines will be really important. The other question may have something to do with debts, emotionally, or you have to be careful that there may be some sense in which you have to very carefully balance your own needs and pursuit of happiness and pleasure relative to things that you're obligated to give or share with other people, your time, your energy, your money, bills that are due karmically, that may come up and say, hey, look, like, don't be too selfish right now. You're gonna need to balance with the needs and demands from multiple other areas in your life right now, despite what might be a pretty strong urge or desire to kind of just do my own thing. So anyway, watch for some of those combinations of themes around June 5th with the eclipse. Now, when we go forward between the 12th and the 13th, that's when we see Mars coming into conjunction with Neptune in the 8th house. Now, this Mars-Neptune conjunction in the 8th house can point towards some kind of emotional solidarity. We are doing something together. We are facing a problem. We are working through a challenge, and that we could be business partners or a spouse or a lover. But the 8th house generally has to do with other people's resources and debts and obligations that we share with other people, that other people owe us something, or we owe something to somebody else, and the karmic laws that are always kind of mandating that we take care of those soul contracts. Well, Mars Neptune in the 8th likes to do things as a we. It's effort, Mars, but the unity of Neptune. And so, this could point to collectively trying to solve or fix something. On the other hand, it could be about the difficulty in keeping boundaries when you're in the midst of complicated, karmic entanglements with other people. So you don't want to lose yourself or become too self-sacrificial, giving up too much of yourself. Make sure things are balanced, and be discriminating with how you are differentiating between yourself and what you have, and what other people have, or what other people need, and so forth. Now, when we go forward from there, we go to the 18th and the 19th of the month. And right around that time, you're going to see Mercury turning retrograde in Cancer in your 12th house. And then right after that, on June 21st, there's a solar eclipse in Cancer in your 12th house. You're dealing with the shadows in family, the shadows maybe with a mother or mothering or home and domestic life. This is lunar eclipse in the moon sign in the 12th house, or solar eclipse in the moon sign in the 12th house, plus a Mercury retrograde in Cancer in the 12th house. So the 12th house confronts us with shadows, and there's often loss or grief involved, or some sense of facing those unconscious demons. And so you're doing that right now. If you're a Leo this month, later in the month, there's a real focus on this, especially with regard to the ancestral past, or family, or home and environment like that. Maybe the topic of mothers and mothering, or sort of domestic themes in general. Health could also be a little bit of a question. So take good care of yourself. Don't be surprised also if there is a temptation to get into emotional dynamics in your life right now that are not entirely healthy. So be on guard for that as well. The time for solitude and time to reflect and contemplate will help you to get through this and perhaps learn and grow as a result of these energies in your 12th house. Whereas people I've noticed that don't take that time tend to get really spun out by 12th house eclipses. So between June 26th and the 27th, Venus will turn direct in your 11th house, which is the place of friends, groups, allies. And so you've been through quite a process around your social life, and there's something that may shift again with regard to social exchange or friends, colleagues, and so forth right around this time. Maybe there's something that's been delayed or held back for a while, but a shift of momentum in a positive sense is coming through right around this time. So then on June 27th into the 28th, Mars will enter Aries into your 9th house, where it will now be for a very long time, all the way until January. And that means that there's an extended period of looking at the overlap between faith, religion, higher learning, foreign countries, and the god of war. So we're talking about the conflict of ideals and beliefs, the need to take action and to learn or study, challenge, seek answers, and maybe some adventurous traveling even as a part of this time period. Now, that lasts again all the way until January, and there's going to be a Mars retrograde later in the summer there. Finally, on June 30th, you're going to see Jupiter and Pluto conjoin in the sign of Capricorn, and that is taking place in your 6th house, which is a place that's associated with work and toil, and usually kind of hard work, and drudgery is not the greatest word in the world, I know, but when Jupiter and Pluto conjoin in your 6th house, which they're doing several times this year, there's some way in which you may be purging or purifying something, and there's a lot of work or effort that has to go into it, and it could be draining. It could kind of feel like the cards are stacked against you sometimes, but working through this part as a part of this year is leading to some very important change by the end of the year. You may be working really hard to have something recognized, or to you might be trying to build something, whether that's in school or a business or a relationship. There's effort being put in for you, for Leo risings this year, and they eventually lead to the solidification of something by December of the end of the year. So just trust that if there's another kind of cathartic moment that's kind of it makes you dig deep, it's par for the course for Leos this year, and it will pass, and you will notice probably a lot more promising, uplifting energy by the end of the year. All right, so that is what we've got for Leos. Let's wind it back and do it one more time for Sagittarius. So, of course, for Sagittarians this month, it's huge if you're a Sagittarius, because this month is it's all about you, because the lunar eclipse is in your sign. So let's put Sagittarius on the ascendant. We'll start off with the Cazimi on June 3rd, which is happening in your 7th house of relationships. So that Cazimi energy means that there's something pretty sparkly and fun and fortunate and attractive and empowered, let's say, happening in the area of love and relationships. You could meet someone who really benefits you in some way, who helps you grow, or who makes a connection, who helps you make an important realization or discovery. It could also mean that something just generally beneficial is happening in the life of a partner, or it could introduce you to someone, or just give you some kind of epiphany or insight that you really need relative to your social life, or in the context of relationships. People obviously act as mirrors for us all the time, and Mercury, Venus Cazimi in the 7th house of relationships should be sharing or showing something back to you that is really special. That June 3rd day is it's an empowered day for Venus. It represents a turning point that's happening right now in your life relative to your relationships as well. Pretty significant. So Let us go on then to the 5th. And this is where it really happens if you're a Sagittarius rising, because you've got the lunar eclipse in your home sign, first house, square to Mars in the 4th house. It is just a really big moment of transformation. It's all about self in the first house. How are you transforming as a person? How is your health or your body transforming? Your self concept, meaning how do I think of myself, and am I living with some alignment? Um, you know, am I living in alignment, I should say, with who I think I am in the world? Those are questions that get brought up pretty powerfully during eclipses in the first house. It's kind of an existential identity moment for Sagittarians. And it's pulling from two opposite directions: relationships and matters of the home, family, living situation, parents, and so forth. So there's domestic concerns. There might be some degree of confrontation happening in the area of home and family. Relationships is cooking with Venus retrograde in your 7th house, and it's coming back to you, and you're going like, who am I? Where am I going? What does this mean for me? What do I need or want? So really big moment for Sagittarians on the 5th. We go forward to the 12th or 13th, excuse me, and we get Mars in a conjunction with Neptune. And this is happening in your 4th house, which is the place of home and family. Now, Mars Neptune likes, if you've listened to the whole talk I've given already, Mars and Neptune really likes we mentality. So, are you pulling together with family members in order to tackle a problem or face a challenge? That would be a Mars Neptune dynamic in the 4th. Some kind of collective effort or fight relative to home, family, property. But it could also have something to do with death, loss, sacrifice, surrender, dissolution at the roots. Literally, you could see issues around water in the home. Do whatever you have to do to make sure that your cooling unit is working, or if you have a leaky pipe, don't let it, fix it right away. It's like don't wait for this conjunction to occur. Now, so the Mars Neptune conjunction though can also mean some degree of self-sacrifice or surrender, and themes of dissolution or loss or even weakness sort of pictured around the topic of home and family. Pretty deep themes that you might be facing around the topics of your family this month or your living environment. Okay, so we go to June 18th into the 19th. June 18th into the 19th, Mercury turns retrograde in Cancer, and that's going to be happening in your 8th house. And then on the 21st, you get an eclipse in the 8th house, a solar eclipse. Again, the topic of home and family is big this month. Why? Because here's an 8th house lunar or a solar eclipse in Cancer while Mercury's retrograde in Cancer. That's big stuff around home and family. That's big stuff around the topic of family debts and obligations and entanglements emotionally with family members. Maybe something to do particularly with women and mothers. That kind of those kinds of themes in Cancer come up sometimes. But the 8th house is traditionally a house of debts and obligations that people have to us or that we have to others. And so, you look at that Cancer energy with all of the emphasis on Mars and Neptune in the 4th this month, and you're just thinking about themes of loss, of sacrifice, of and of the way in which we are emotionally, we have soul contracts with one another, and there's some big stuff playing out with your let's call it soul contracts, especially with family members, but they could entangle you in other people's families or in the lives of a spouse or a partner. So deep stuff though, and my advice around this is to make sure that you're setting good boundaries this month as a Sagittarius, because there's going to be some way in which you may feel compelled to help others, or others may need you, or and boundaries is going to be an important study for the month, let's call it. So that takes us through the 21st. If we go to the 26th, right around that time, Venus is going to turn direct. Now, this is in your 7th house of relationships. So if you've been experiencing some kind of breakdown and turnaround in the realm of your relationships, the changes that you're thinking about are going to be implemented as the month goes on. And you're going to see that momentum shift around the topic of relationships by about the end of June, June 26th. And it takes a while to play out all the way into August before it's done in your 7th house, but that's the gist of it. Then on the 27th, Mars is going to enter Aries, which 27th into the 28th, which can bring up some degree of conflict or difficulty around the topic of children or pregnancy, or things like that. Like Mars entering a woman's 5th house while she's pregnant sometimes will translate into having to take some bed rest or something like that, or some I've seen a lot of it where it's just like, oh, that's when the nausea hits really bad or something like that. So if you're pregnant and there's a little kind of a little bump in the road, typically that's going to be par for the course when Mars is in your 5th house. However, the reason I'm saying this is just so that Sagittarians who are pregnant or thinking of getting pregnant know this Mars energy, which can just bring more challenges in general, things that make you better and often stronger as a person for dealing with, but just challenges can come up relative to the topic of children and pregnancy all the way until January. So you do want to just pay close attention to that. And the things that are happening around the topics of children and pregnancy for Sagittarians for the rest of the year are very powerful. Sagittarius risings especially. So that's Mars entering Aries. It can also indicate that there's just more of a thrill-seeking appetite for pleasure. You got to make sure it's not destructive, but it may also be a sign that like you need to get out and be more active or more creative. Riding a bike or just kind of activity. Mars is going to need that and wants to looking for pleasure in relation to action, and that could also be in regard to your love life as well. So finally, on June 30th, Jupiter conjoins Pluto in your 2nd house of money and finances. This is one of several moments during the year where there's big catharsis and change happening around the topic of money and finances. So watch for that coming through at the end of the month, and this will repeat again later in the year. But there's deeper catharsis and transformation around the topic of money and finances that are happening. For a lot of people, it's going to be really good, but there's going to be some breakdown and change of your financial reality that's happening. And by the end of the year, it'll be cleared up. Okay, so Sagittarians, that's what I've got for you. Fire signs. I hope you enjoyed your forecast for the month. Let me know your stories. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'm out of town right now with some family, just quarantined in a different location. So that's why you're not seeing me in my office. But we'll be back to my office pretty shortly too. So hope you have a great month of June, and I look forward to hearing all your stories. All right, take it easy.